Hello 5B, it's good afternoon. It's library time today, so we are going to carry on reading the next chapter of The Other Side of Truth, and Eleanor decided she wanted to sit in today. Can you say hello, Eleanor?
Hello.
Alright, chapter 22. It's called Bullies in the Head. Oh, if you want to read along, I'll put a link to the book in the comments. A freshly baked chocolate cake was waiting on the kitchen table when Sade arrived back at the King's. A large slice was already missing. Sade called to Femi, who was huddled in front of the television next door. He didn't reply. Femi won't talk to me too, you know, but at least he likes my baking. I decided you both deserve a treat after your first day at school. Aunt Gracie said brightly. Sade didn't feel like talking either, but it was difficult not to respond. Aunt Gracie was trying so hard to make them feel at home. They sat together for a short while in the warm kitchen. Splashes of colour in among the crockery and a tray of pink and white flowers on the windowsill defied the greyness outside. How was it at school? Aunt Gracie poured orange juice for Sade and tea for herself. Ever since morning break, Sade had not been able to get Marcia's threat out of her mind. They were in different classes for maths and science, but at lunchtime, Marcia and Donna had sauntered across the canteen to the table next to her and Mariam. The small group with them included Kevin. Sade had tried not to look, but she felt sure the titters of laughter were about her, especially when she heard snatches of Kevin's voice and something about wearing other people's clothes. Why had they taken such an instant dislike to her? Mariam said they didn't like Africans. It was a puzzle. Marcia said her grandmother lived in Jamaica. Didn't she know, like the Kings did, her own ancestors came from Africa? Aunt Gracie's right eyebrow was raised like a question mark, waiting. How was it? She repeated. Any problems? It was fine, thank you, Sade replied. She hardly tasted the soft crumbling chocolate. As soon as the lie was out of her mouth, she remembered Mama's, tell a lie, play with fire, but don't complain about the smoke. She finished her cake and drink, only half listening as Aunt Gracie spoke about her first school. It had been little more than a shed, ruled over by a teacher who carried his cane everywhere. When Aunt Gracie asked if she had homework, Sade nodded. 2 other teachers beside Mr. Morris had set them work. Why not go upstairs, me dear? Do it before supper. No time like the present, you know. Sade was glad to enter the quiet of her room. For a while she sat at the desk in the growing dark, with the pineapple curtains drawn back, watching the evening shadows gradually swamp over the back gardens. Some of the houses on the far side of the gardens became hidden in the dusk, while glowing squares and rectangles lit up others. In a strange way, the darkness reminded her of the forest she intended writing about. The patches of light reminded her that other human beings were out there too. It was a bit like being able to glimpse the village and family house from their hideouts at the forest edge. But there you knew the people, and who were your friends. Here you didn't know who was within those squares of light and whether they would be friendly. What if one of them was Marcia's house? Even if you were being threatened by something terrible in the shadows out there, you wouldn't want to knock on her door. Sade pulled the curtains across the window, turned on the lamp by her desk and removed her English book from her bag. Why was she letting Marcia frighten her so much? The girl probably tried to push her weight around with every new student, making them believe she was in charge. Her threat was probably a big joke. Marcia and Donna would just love to watch her getting into trouble with Mr. Morris because she hadn't done her work. Well, they weren't going to catch her out. When Aunt Gracie called Sade to the telephone just before supper, all her homework was finished. Mama up here was ringing to find out about their first day at school. It was fine, thank you. This time, the words didn't seem like such a lie. It was easier saying them into a telephone as well. Did you make any friends today? Mama up here delved a little further. There's a girl. She's called Mariam. She sat with me. Femi had come out to the hallway to listen. Listening with the banisters in one hand, he swung his body in slow semicircles. Ah, a Somali name. Yes, my teacher said. Probably a refugee too. Mama Appiah's tone was matter-of-fact, but it injected a question into Sade's mind. Had something dreadful happened to Mariam and her family as well? Mama Appiah went on to inquire about Femi, but when Sade held out the receiver to him, he turned away and wandered back into the sitting room. Reminding Sade that their immigration questionnaire still had to be filled in, Mama Appiah said she would take the children next week for a further interview with Mr. Nathan. That night, Sade dreamed she was answering the telephone in Papa's study. The voice is Donna's. It's giggling, threatening her with Marcia and her brother. Papa grabs the receiver, but the voice is no longer there. Bullies are cowards, he says dismissively. There's a fierce knocking at the gate. Joseph hobbles to open it and Mama hurries behind him. Marcia is standing there pointing at Sade. That's her, she calls over her shoulder. And two sharp cracks splinter the air. She hears her father's fierce cry, rising and falling. No! No! The revving of a car and skidding of car tires smothers his voice. Mamma mi? Sade whispers. Marcia looks loftily down at Sade crouching beside Mama. It was meant for you. Sade's eyes searched fearfully through the shadows of the bedroom, while her fingers groped for the lamp switch. Even with the light on, she continued to shiver. The little white alarm clock with green numbers which Aunt Gracie had placed on her desk showed it was just past 3 o'clock. She squeezed herself, almost pinching, rubbing her arms. What was wrong with her? Why was she letting Marcia sneak inside her head and frighten her so much? She hardly knew her, and yet here was the girl already in her dreams, mixed up in her nightmare about Mama. If she could talk with Papa, she could imagine what he would say. At least what he would have said before Mama died. We have to stand up to bullies, Sade girl. Otherwise they get inside your head. That's how they succeed in controlling us. The bully boy soldiers rule us today because most people let them. They frighten us into believing they're all powerful. But without their brass buttons, they're nothing. Everything Papa said was true. But what happens when you stand up alone yet everyone else is too frightened? That's what she wanted to ask him. What would he say now, after what they did to Mama? What if some people actually blamed Papa? They might say, look, it was your fault. If you'd kept quiet like everyone else, your wife wouldn't have been killed. Your children wouldn't have lost their mother. Sade's mind suddenly jumped to Uncle Tunde's face as he accused Papa. You call your article Our Children's Future. What do you imagine will happen now to your own, Folarin? Then the next moment her uncle and father were agreeing that Uncle Dele would look after the children in London. But would they have still sent them in the aeroplane with that awful peacock lady if they'd known Uncle Dele had gone missing? Where on earth was he? Sade tossed and turned. Too many awful questions were scurrying into her brain. It was as if she'd trodden on a nest of giant ants and they were crazily trying to reassemble themselves. In desperation, she reached up to the shelf for the girls' annual. Pulling her quilt securely around her, she absorbed herself in the adventures of two girls lost on Dartmoor while searching for runaway ponies. The next story was about a girl sent away to boarding school when her mother becomes seriously ill. Sade kept reading until the eyes began to ache. It was after 4 o'clock when at last she switched off her lamplight and fell into a heavy sleep. Check out the Seesaw article, and please keep up with your own reading as well. All right, I'll see you soon. Take care, 5P.